and welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul. My co-host Justin Baker is here joining me as we continue our preview on the 2023-24 NHL regular season. If you missed the first division preview of the Central Division, we did 2 episodes because it took us so damn long to get through all 8 teams. But we are going to attempt to do 1 episode per division from here on out. So that's the goal. Will it happen? What's your money on that, Justin?
Well, first and foremost, let's just be honest. The Atlantic, we're going to do in 2 shows.
Well, that's true, yeah, because we're going to hit Wings and Leafs, yeah.
In a separate episode. So,
right.
But, yeah, I'm very confident in our ability to do that here moving forward. So,
all right, good deal. Well, yeah. I will, it's one of we could put money on it, and then I could really drag it out just to win. But we won't do it. We're doing our best to keep it to one episode for the Metro, 1 episode for the Pacific, and then we'll hit the bulk of the Atlantic, and then we're going to do a Leafs Red Wings preview because those are our the teams we cheer for. So we're just going to spend a little extra time on those ones. Those will be coming up. But again, if you haven't listened to the Central Division, subscribe to the show. Listen to both of those, and If you didn't listen to those, then you won't know that we are going in the inverse order of the 2022-23 standings, and it actually works out rather perfect for the Metropolitan Division because why wouldn't we start with the Columbus Blue Jackets right now, who just 48 hours ago, former head coach Michael Babcock resigns as their head coach after good old HR disaster, which Justin is in HR. So I'm just going to let you. I actually wanted to ask you, what would happen if this happened, if something similar happened in your context?
Oh my gosh!
Like has anything? Have you ever heard of anything happening like this? Even examples in school or anything as you were going up?
I mean, so it all comes down to personal information, right? How private are you getting with somebody when you're asking to look at someone's phone, right? I mean, of course, from an HR standpoint, there's HIPAA laws, right? So there's private medical information. You can't go around and ask people stuff like their gender, their sex, what's your medical history, all that kind of crap. And so to be quite honest with today's younger players and, I don't want to call it this, but a more woke generation of younger people these days.
Maybe we could just say like a more, they're maybe a little bit more sensitive.
Yes.
But also this generation goes, your phone is basically like your diary plus your photo albums plus your porn stash.
Yeah. It's an extension of you. But I love the diary part though. That's a perfect way to put it because what it was, for my sisters back in the day, I remember growing up, they all had diaries and you did not dare to touch those. That was taboo.
Right. And imagine asking someone, hey, is it cool if I just check out your diary for a little bit? I need you to bring it in next time we see each other.
Yeah. And more than anything else, I mean, here's a coach that, for whatever reason, right? I mean, he had to have heard all the chatter from the media, like, why was this guy hired? Right. Giving him a second chance, all this crap. And so not even before training camp start, he is already doing some shit that is just quote unquote questionable to begin with. And that to me crosses the line because now you're invading somebody's privacy. I mean, it is what it is, right? And so regardless if, they're worried about, finding your link to all their porn sites or their, their sexting pics that they have, whatever, all that garbage aside, like there's no reason anybody should ever ask to see another person's phone unless it's your spouse, right? I mean, that's really the only time, that it's okay.
Yeah, or when someone says, "Hey, check this out," and they show you their they offer it up, I guess is the
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not surprising that he didn't last long, but it is shocking that it didn't last. It was over before it began. But
not the way I expected it to end.
No, but I'm sure he'll take his $50 million and go retire somewhere now. I cannot imagine that he ever coaches in the NHL again.
And no, it's ECHL or bust at this point.
And in the ECHL, I mean, it's like you're gonna hire. You wouldn't hire this guy anyways.
Well, that's true. You don't want him around young people anymore, right?
I'm in a chat with my family that likes the Leafs, and I said his only shot is to go to the KHL. 100%. Like he could go to the KHL and probably get a job. They're not as sensitive over there, I don't think so. That would be his last chance to go to the KHL, which I don't think he'll do, and I don't think he exactly needed the money. I think it was just more like he wanted to get back into coaching and thought he could prove everybody wrong, kind of thing, and that didn't happen. You would just think that maybe you would run by the things that you're going to do with someone else. Like really, there was no one else that was like, "Hey, Mike, maybe we shouldn't do this." That's the question that I'm not seeing being asked anywhere. Is like, was it just like Babcock went rogue all by himself in a room with a player by himself, and like this is where he was doing it? Nobody else saw this happening. No one else was around. There was no assistant coaches. There was just no one. He did this all in secret. I don't believe that. I feel like there had to have been people around that could have questioned this or like pushed it a little bit, and that's the one thing that I'm kind of wondering is why is he the only one who like knew about it, or it was just like, oh no, it's no big deal. These couple players were cool with it, and it just seems like there could have and should have been somebody else around. I don't know. It's just that's what kind of leaves me with some unanswered questions. It's like, who else could have been a little bit responsible for this? Aside from, Kekalainen and John Davidson, who hired him, but that's a little different. Like, I get it. The GM isn't like following the coach around. He's got other stuff to do, but usually there's a lot of people around the coaching staff. So it just seems a little funny that there was no one else that had anything to do with any of this. Just Mike Babcock going totally solo. But should we talk about the Blue Jackets?
Please.
We'll talk about
for 20 minutes.
Yeah, right. Pascal Vincent, now their head coach, who I guess we'll say that's an internal hire. He was their assistant coach prior, so he's just staying on, gets elevated to head coach. There were some that thought that he should have been the one who was hired as head coach before. What was it? Scott Housen? Was he their last coach?
Brad Larson,
that's right.
Yeah, close.
I had heard some people talking about Pascal Vincent should have just been hired in the first place before him anyways. So maybe this is finally the right guy. It just took, third time's a charm kind of thing. So we'll see, because I can't imagine that Kekalainen is getting another shot at it with someone else. Like, this is probably going to be it. I mean, maybe he gets to hire another coach, but at this point, he's done absolutely nothing in the 10 years he's been there, in my opinion. And absolutely nothing, but been relatively ineffective. And I think he could bring somebody else in. But in the meantime, let's talk Columbus Blue Jackets, and we'll leave the head coaching stuff aside. Let's start with this. Let's start positive. What do you like about this team, Justin?
I love their first overall draft pick from this previous draft, Adam Fantilli. Oh my gosh, this guy is going to be a beast. And I don't know if you've been watching any of the prospect tournaments, camp stuff in Traverse City, but he looked phenomenal. He looks like he's going to be, in my opinion, I think he's my favorite for the Calder Trophy going into the season. Okay.
I have heard from some Columbus Blue Jackets writers that their prediction is Fantilli becomes the greatest Blue Jacket of all time, and that he will eclipse Rick Nash. I've seen that in a few different places. So it's a bold statement, since Rick Nash, is he a Hall of Famer?
I don't know.
But his numbers retired and whatnot in Columbus, and he's just the highest scoring Blue Jacket in history. Right. So, I don't know that the expectation is come in here and be the greatest player in franchise history. They would love that, but it certainly looks like he is going to be relied upon a lot this year. He's going to be it put in positions to succeed. And the nice thing for the Blue Jackets, they have a lot of players in front of them that they can play at center, so they can shift them around. You can play on the wing. You've got Boone Jenner, you got Sean Corrali, you've got Texier who can play center, Jack Roslovic. So you have pieces in place to where you don't have to play them against the best players every single night, which is a huge advantage. You know, a team that's picking second overall generally has a very bare outlook on what they have to offer to the player who's coming in. But Columbus is relatively, I won't say stacked, but their cupboards are relatively full of decent NHL players. I mean, they've got really high-end guys like Gaudreau and Laine, and throughout their lineup, there's depth. There's just, I mean, their defense was really bad last year, and all they did was go and grab Damon Severson and Ivan Provorov, and I think they're just poised to be a much, much better team. They've got a healthy Zach Werenski. This could be that team, you know, where every year there kind of seems like there's that team that finished poorly the year before, and they come out and they grab a playoff spot. And this may be this year's version of the Seattle Kraken kind of vibe of last year.
Ooh, okay. Wow.
If they weren't in the Metro.
It may, well, so
because the Metro is stacked. It's going to be a dogfight in the Metro. But
well, I'll tell you this about the Metro. I think the top three spots are locked in, no questions about it. It's New York, Carolina, and Jersey. But beyond that, they almost kind of remind me a little bit. This division is going to remind me a little bit of the Central Division this year, where I think you might only see three teams get in the playoffs, just because, again, when we look at the other division, we'll talk about it later, but with Buffalo, Ottawa, Detroit, all supposedly getting better, and I don't think, you know, again, even though Boston is going to take a step back, I don't think they're going to fall too far. And so you could potentially only see three teams get in from this division, but I do think the teams at the bottom, i.e. Columbus, are going to be much, much more improved, especially with a healthy Werenski and the improved back end. Now, the big question mark for me, though, is Merzlikins. You have no Korpisalo there to bail you out at this point, and I'm not completely sold on Tarasov yet. I'd like to see a larger sample size before I give him my seal of approval. But Merzlikins, to me, is on a very, very short leash. They've got Aaron Dell
on a PTO.
I mean, you could see him come in, and it wouldn't be a bad ad for a third goaltender. Obviously, he'd have to probably start off in the AHL for the season, but I think you could see him called up, especially given Merzlikins' injury history and maybe my lack of confidence in his ability to regain his old form.
Yeah, I mean, he's being paid $5.4 million for another 4 years, so it's time for Merzlikins to kind of return to form. I mean, he's really 2 seasons removed from having a good year, right? Like his .916 save percentage in 2020, 2021. And the year after that, he was pretty average. And last year, he stunk.
Yeah, and here's the thing you said, right? 2 years removed, right? And who was the coach for the last 2 years? Brad Larson. So
fair, totally fair, yeah.
Yeah, so now a new coach comes in, maybe a new system, better improved defense, and Werenski's back healthy this year. You might see, you would assume those numbers have got to go up.
Yeah, and we haven't even really had a chance to mention like Kent Johnson, who you expect to take that next step and be a regular member of this team, and also like maybe get some bigger minutes. I mean, he had 40 points last year. If he takes that next step and also moves up in the lineup, I mean, Columbus has a lot to like here. Even if this team doesn't make the playoffs, there's a lot of reason to watch this team. I mean, if I see, I don't have a game to watch, Columbus is probably going to be one of those teams where I'm interested in watching a lot of their players. I mean, I'm interested in watching to see what Fantilli and Johnson and Marchenko and I mean, Gaudreau and Laine are always entertaining. I think this team has the potential to at least be competitive enough to be entertaining. Whereas last year they were just a mess. It was a mess. Now, can anybody get their star forwards the puck? That'll be the challenge. Provorov's got to be better than he was last year in Philadelphia. And, Severson is a nice stay-at-home type of defenseman. He's not going to put up huge points. If he can get, I guess he's more like a two-way guy, not necessarily just stay at home, but he's responsible. But we'll see. Can he get back to that 40-point clip where he was a couple years ago? If he can, I think it probably means that Columbus is having a big year on the power play. I like where this team's going. I don't know if they make the playoffs, but I like where they're going.
Yeah, agreed. They're not making the playoffs in my mind, but I think they're going to move up a couple spots in the standing, and it would not be a shocker to see them finish as high as 5th in this division.
Okay, yeah. I mean, if they made the playoffs, I think it would be like if you just erase last season and you just go, just forget it, get it out of your mind, look at what this team is, and look what the players that have been around that aren't too young, look what they've done in the last 3 years. Tell me this team isn't going to be competitive. And I think you would say, yeah, I mean, they probably are going to compete for a playoff spot. So I think last year does put a kind of a black eye on them, and you're like, I don't know, they were terrible last year. Are they really going to win any games? But I think that they're much better than what they showed. So we shall see. But I think getting out of the basement is almost assured. Like, I don't think they're going to finish last in this division, because the next team that finished second to last in the division last year, the Philadelphia Flyers, they are probably the one team in this division that got worse. And that starts with Ivan Provorov over to Columbus. They lose one of their top defensemen, and they are sporting a forward group of Travis Konechny, Joel Farabee, Morgan Frost, Owen Tippett. It's kind of Scott Lawton. It's kind of this like ragtag bunch of guys outside of maybe Konechny and Farabee, and really Konechny just hasn't been who he was a couple years ago. He had, 61 points. I guess he did. I forgot he had a 30 goal season last year. But this team there's not a whole lot to like about what this team's walking in with, and we don't necessarily know how good Sean Couturier is going to be coming back from injury, if he does at all.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think he'll be ready for the season. But again, that back end is very, very thin, depleted, right? I mean, when you have Rasmus Ristolainen as your number one defenseman, that's cause for concern, right?
Oh, when we say Travis Sanheim's their number one defenseman.
Yeah, or you could say he's their number one, sure. Yeah.
But he's in their top pairing, probably.
Right. And I think by the end of the year, it wouldn't shock me if you see a guy like Cam York or Sean Walker kind of take over, number one duties, or at least minimize, right? But man, it's going to be tough. I think they've got some good younger players. We mentioned, well, I don't know if you mentioned Owen Tippett in there. I think he's still young and up and coming, so you could see something from him. Noah Cates, again, young players that Torts kind of gravitated to a little bit more last year. But man, there's just not a lot to love about this team up front or on the back end. I mean, they brought in
Garnet Hathaway, who had a decent little stretch there.
But
last
he's not
season
playing
for Boston.
top 6 minutes either, so it's just it's tough. Maybe you have Cam Atkinson play on that third line and provide a little depth scoring, but
this to me blew my mind when I was looking through this team. I was like, Cam Atkinson is 34,
right?
Yeah, I do not remember him being in the league for the last 12 years or something like that. Like that's crazy, but yeah, he has been, and he played well last year. Until he got hurt towards the end there. But yeah, I think there's some okay players on this team. I look at it and I go, all right, Sean Couturier, now 30 years old. Any chance that maybe he moves? I know his deal's big, $7.7 million. Next year the cap will go up by a considerable margin. I wonder if Sean Couturier is a player to consider moving. Carter Hart's an RFA at the end of the year. His name will be coming up a lot, I think, throughout the season, and it's just going to be likely another season of a lot of trade rumors, getting younger, and watching this team shoot for the stars in the draft lottery, because that is what they're set up to do.
Yeah, and that's the name you mentioned, Carter Hart, right, that I'm going to be watching. The only reason I'm watching Philadelphia this season is because I want to see what plays out with him, right? Because he's in a contract year, so obviously, this is even though he's going to be an RFA, this is essentially a make it or break it year, right? Do they move on from him and really start the rebuild, and refresh the right way, bring in a different goaltender? That's the big question mark, right? Because they could probably still get a decent return. They're not going to get a first round pick, but you could probably
he's an average goalie, which that's nothing to balk about. He's a guy who's, he's maybe the 20th best goalie in the league. And that's okay. That's not a horrible place to be at, because there are teams that have two goalies in the top 20 of the league. So to have a goalie that's a top 20 goalie isn't a bad thing. I think given the right scenario, I think he could win you playoff series or 2 or 3. Given the right team, but this isn't the right team. And at this point, he's kind of wasting away here in Philadelphia. Kind of reminds me a little bit of a Gibson kind of vibe in Anaheim, where it's like, is he really this bad, or is it just because the team in front of him has been this bad?
Right. Yeah, and I wonder, like a team like LA, at what point, if Cam Talbot isn't really working out, not that I'm thinking he's not going to work out. I think he'll be fine there.
When he gets injured.
Right. Well, there's that too, right? But, again, a team like LA who's rebuilding, not really rebuilding, but had retooled really very, very quickly, but never really addressed the long-term goalie situation. So maybe this is like a piece that they go after, at the deadline or something. Who knows, right? But again, that's all speculation, what ifs. But again, there are teams out there like LA that could really use a young goaltender who has that potential and is, even if they were to bring him in, he would still be a good fit and still provide them some decent numbers.
All right. Yeah. Philadelphia is what it is. They're rebuilding, and we know that. And so I think if you're a Philadelphia fan, you're just kind of hoping to see a continued change, young players get opportunities to play, and those guys who are on expiring contracts, you hope that they get some decent picks for guys so that they can, you can turn those into good players later on and have more shots at the lottery there too. Okay, let's move on to the Washington Capitals. It's weird to see the Capitals this low in the division. They missed the playoffs for the first time in since when? In a while, right? 10 years.
Yeah. First time in 15 that Pittsburgh and Washington missed.
Right. I look at this team. It's relatively the same. Not a whole lot of changes have been made. There was a lot of talk about Anthony Mantha getting dealt. He didn't get dealt. There was a lot of Evgeny Kuznetsov rumors out there. Everyone was saying he would get dealt. He didn't. Backstrom and Ovi are back again. John Carlson's back. Really it's just kind of a little bit the blue line. They lose Dmitry Orlov. Darcy Kemper, Charlie Lindgren's still there. So much the same from Washington. Will it have different results this year?
I'm not so confident.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, who's coming in after a really bad year? And by a really bad year by their standards, but like a very underwhelming season from the Washington Capitals in general, and go, hey, why don't we just sit pat? We'll lose one of our best defensemen. We'll just sit pat though. Okay, my bad. They did bring in Max Pacioretty. I forgot about that. But Max Pacioretty hasn't played a game in this league. Or what did he play? 1 game last year? 2 games?
Yeah.
So he's played 1 game. Oh, he played 5 games last year. 39 the year before. 48 the year before because there was a lockout. But that's he has not played much hockey in the last 2 years. 44 games total, and coming off of 2 different what was it? Torn Achilles that he had.
Oh,
I think that's what it was.
Yeah, either way, very significant injuries, right? So
just not in a good position to be able to instill confidence. Good player. If he's super healthy, great. That's fantastic. but I don't know that I can trust that Max Pacioretty is the one answer that the Capitals needed to come back from into the playoffs. And yes, by the way, it was 2 torn Achilles tendons since the summer of 2022. So take that for what it's worth. I hear that's a pretty bad injury. Ask Aaron Rodgers. He'll tell you. Oh, boy. He'll tell you. So, yeah, I mean, of course, the Washington Capitals, we're going to be watching them because we want to see Alex Ovechkin bust the goal record. We want to see him beat it, and it's going to be exciting as we get down here. He's at 822. He needs, 71 more goals to break Gretzky's record. It's not going to happen this year, but his worst goal-scoring year in the last 6 years was 33 goals in 16-17. So, and I mean, I think it's probably more likely he's in that 40-goal mark again. And, that'll leave us with next year. It'll be this huge chase because, he'll be somewhere around 860 and there'll be a lot of chatter and it'll be a lot of fun to watch that race happen. But I think really, to me, that's about the only reason why I'd be excited to watch this Washington Capitals team, because it just seems like they're running back a team that should have been dismantled 3 years ago.
Yeah, you mentioned it, right? I could have told you the minute they signed Nicholas Backstrom to that extension, I knew they were handicapping themselves, that they just were going to keep rolling it back until Ovi finally got that record-breaking goal, and then they're going to tear it down.
Which I mean, hey, you got to give him good players around him. You're not going you are going to have him break that record. I mean, that is massive. It's unbelievable. But I think that they could have done. It's sad because they could have done more maybe 3 years ago to take a little bit of a step back in order to take a bigger step forward here. But it's all. It's same as Dylan Strome. You went out and signed Dylan Strome to $5 million. You're signing Tom Wilson to $6.5 million. Tom Wilson is getting treated like he's Matthew Tkachuk here. Poor man's Matthew Tkachuk. He doesn't put up the numbers consistently to warrant this amount of money, in my opinion. I know what he brings to the table in terms of the grit, but come on. In reality, he had one 50-point season, and the rest of the time he barely pushes 40 points. He is not worth that. He's a guy that
Obi likes to play with, and that's why he got the deal.
Yep. That would be it.
And that's fair. And I don't mind.
No, because a good organization says, Alex, we understand that you like him, you like to play with him, but he plays with Alex Ovechkin, and look at the points he's still putting up. Nothing. I would rather have Zach Hyman. I'd rather have Michael Bunting. There's many other options. The Leafs have gone through and signed those guys for $5 a piece, and then they let them walk and go somewhere else because they couldn't afford them. But still, there are other Tom Wilson type of players you could put up there that can actually put up numbers. Younger guys who you don't have to pay $6.5 million for the next 7 years. I hated that deal. I think it's a joke. Tom Wilson has something on Brian McClellan.
Well, I don't like it. Well, yeah, if there's anything positive to look at for this team, I will say I really like the fact that they brought in Rasmus Sandin. 19 games played, 15 points. I thought it was, a good ad at the end of the season, and I'm hoping he'll get, again, with some more elevated minutes, right? They don't have a lot of big players on that left side, and big, what I mean is, guys that move the puck very well. So, you could see his minutes elevated very, very quickly.
Yeah, maybe he gets to play with Karlsson.
Right, exactly. So he could be a nice fantasy sleeper out there and someone who can come in and, anchor that second power play unit and could, put up 30, 40 points for you, which in most fantasy leagues, if you can find a fourth or third defenseman that can put up those numbers, that's pretty good.
Yep. And they still have Darcy Kemper. Maybe he has a little bit more of a bounce back here. I don't think he wasn't bad last year.
No.
909 save percentage. I think he was pretty good for what was in front of him. Hopefully he can continue that and just, you get used to playing with new players and that can also be a factor as well. maybe they'll figure out what to do with Mantha. I don't expect this team to look exactly the same by the end of the year. I wonder what kind of changes they'll make and what kind of deadline acquisition they may make. But overall, I mean, yeah, I guess maybe the same thing goes for Columbus or with Washington, where I said, just forget about last year. Look at this team. Tell me, do they have a shot at the playoffs? High-end side, this team still has a lot of high-end players. And if Max Pacioretty can return to form and he can score 3 goals every 5 games, that's a 40-goal season. It's a 50-goal season. So if he can return to that, maybe the Capitals have a shot at a wild card, and some of these guys catch fire, have better years than they did last year, and we're all going, see, Washington they weren't as bad as we thought they were, but I don't know that I see them being able to push any of these teams that have risen ahead of them. Well,
I've got them penciled in at number 7 in this division.
Oh, okay. So you've got them falling even more.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean that, and you know what? It makes sense because you look at the team that finished ahead of Washington, which is the Pittsburgh Penguins. They did the opposite. They did everything they could do to shake this team up, and even though it was really just one big move, they absolutely did that. They go out, they grab the best offensive defenseman of of this generation. They go, they trade for him, and he just had over 100 points, which is outrageous. Wins the Norris, and they go and acquire the guy. So for better, for worse, this team looks different. They have They went out, they got the best player that any team has added in this offseason. There's no team that added a better player than other than maybe, I would say even Chicago adding Connor Bedard. For this next season, Karlsson is the best add out of any team. Pittsburgh did that. It's going to elevate the Penguins, and it's going to motivate them. I've heard Crosby talking a lot. These guys sound motivated to go out and prove people wrong. I mean, they missed the playoffs by 1 point, and they should have been in the playoffs. So I think when I look at the Penguins compared to the Capitals, I see a team that's actively trying to win, whereas Washington is just actively trying to not lose. That's the way that it appears.
I like the way you put that. And let's not forget, Crosby's still a top 10 player in this league. In my opinion.
Yeah, he is.
So as long as you got a player like that, I mean, come on. You've still got a chance. You've got arguably a top 10 defenseman, a top 10 centerman. And not to mention, not only do they go out and add Eric.
Hey, remember how Evgeny Malkin put up 83 points last year?
Oh, yeah, quietly, right? So now, yeah. I mean,
and added Riley Smith.
Well, there's another addition, right? You add Riley Smith, who in my mind is still a very formidable player, so he's going to provide some nice top 6 minutes for you. And then you get Ryan Graves, who in my opinion is going to be so underrated on this back end. I think he does a very good job of being responsible defensively, and I think he's going to allow guys like Erik Karlsson and Letang to just go and do their thing offensively and not have to really worry so much about the defensive side of it, because this guy, to me, was a stud last year in Jersey, the way he was able to play both ends of the rink.
Yep, absolutely. And they rid themselves of Jeff Petrie, who just was not a fit here. They did a lot of nice things. And I think that the Penguins, out of any of the teams that missed the playoffs in the Metro last year, has the best chance to return.
I agree.
No doubt about it. When you look up and down this roster, the Penguins. Now we've officially shifted to the Penguins. If you haven't picked that up yet, what from a defensive standpoint, we know Karlsson, Letang, you got Graves and Peterson, and then some combination of Ty Smith, Riedel, Pierre-Olivier Joseph. But from a forward standpoint, this team's issue has always been depth. It's been depth since they were winning cups. That it was always the all right, who's gonna play? Yeah, there was the who's gonna play with Crosby, but then there was who else is gonna do anything when these two lines are out on the ice. Do we have a lot of faith in Jeff Carter at this point?
Well, I don't know if they do either, and I think that's part of the reason they brought in Lars Eller, because Carter is slowing down. It's apparent. And when you have to be a little bit more responsible and have your legs underneath you when you're playing the center position, that's
down to 29 points last year, just not cutting it. And Lars Eller is a nice grab. He's 34 years old, but he's responsible. And then Noel Acciari as well, who Dubas just acquired at the trade deadline. He leaves his team and then he goes and he signs him in Pittsburgh. So that tells you what Dubas thinks about Noel Acciari, who had a really nice playoff for the Leafs. In terms of, he only had 2 goals, but what the other things that he brings to the table, not a big points guy, but somebody who can fill in the roster there in Pittsburgh. And I also, I have I have this soft place for Matt Nieto. I don't know why. I just always have liked him. I like his speed. I think that like he's somebody who, he's going to play on your like bottom, the fourth line, but he's somebody who just seems to chip in at the right time. He did for the Avalanche last year. He went back to Colorado after spending. He seems to bounce around. San Jose, Colorado. Now he's in Pittsburgh, and it's one of those signings where I'm glad that he just keeps on finding a home, because I've always liked Matt Nieto and what he can bring to that. The bottom 6 there in Pittsburgh. So, do you have this team making the playoffs? You have them sneaking in?
They're a bubble team. I'm still on the fence about them because I'm not 100% sold on. Again, I'm curious how Jake Gensel is going to bounce back after
that's the
coming
big
off
question,
the injury.
Right? Yeah.
And you know what? I have 100% faith in Crosby, Malkin up front, Letang and Carlson on the back end. A little shaky on Tristan Jarry. So, maybe they overpaid because, again, there weren't a ton of options out there as far as goaltending. But ultimately,
if he can stay healthy, good on him. But I don't have that faith that he can stay healthy.
Right. And I think that's part of the reason, too. They also brought in Alex Nedeljkovic. I think they're hoping that maybe he can get back to that Carolina form after, playing in Detroit. And they also bring in another former Detroit goaltender, Magnus Hellberg, who I think could be a decent third goaltender. I'm not sold on him entirely, but
yeah, he could start 8 games or something like that.
Yeah, but again, I think it's all going to come down on Jarry to bounce back a little bit, and you hope that again with the top 3 almost essentially written in for this division, you hope that those emerging teams in the other division in this conference aren't going to take too many wins from you. Because, again, Boston, in my opinion, is going to drop down a little bit, so those wins are up for grab. And if maybe Pittsburgh grabs, a couple of those wins that maybe Boston had, it could spell for a playoff. Yeah,
I think if I remember correctly, Pittsburgh lost every game to Carolina and New Jersey last year. I believe.
Not to mention that disaster against Chicago at the end of the year.
Yeah. I don't know how you lose that game. You're literally playing a team that is trying to lose, and you have to win one game against that team, and you couldn't pull it out of your ass. Terrible. Okay, let's swing into the playoff teams in the Metro from last year, at least. The New York Islanders were one of the wild card teams, and they went out and grabbed Bo Horvat at the deadline. To me, that was kind of their big off-season move anyways. Like, they just happened to get him a little bit early, because that was really the biggest move for the Islanders, going out and locking up 2 solid centers, Matt Barzal, Bo Horvat. I would say 2 centers that are like 1B type of centers. So you got 2 1B centers, and that's not a bad place to be. If you can't, they did draft Matthew Barzal, who is a good player, but he's not a superstar. And neither is Bo Horvat, but they're that next level. They're elite. So they've got those guys set. The questionable things to me were like giving Pierre Engvall $3 million times 7.
17 years.
that was a weird one. Just wanting to lock these guys up for as long as possible, I guess. Like Scott Mayfield getting $3.5 million for 8 years, and And then, of course, Sorokin. That one's more justified. We're okay with that one. And Semyon Varlamov signing for another 4 years. So, I mean, the Islanders locked in with a great goaltending duo for the next 4 years, the foreseeable future. Where do you see this team with a Bo Horvat all year long? Do you see them being better than where they were last year in that wild card spot?
Boy, I mean, so it really depends on, are you going to get that chemistry? Because they tried to do Horvat in the center and Barzal on the wing right towards the end of the year. So do you have to split these guys up, or can you create some sort of chemistry with them together, right? And I think that's kind of the hope. Because ideally, I think if you can roll those two guys out almost like a top-heavy forward group, because this team has got a great defense, great goaltending, like you mentioned. So they're going to be a team that's not going to go out and beat you 5-1, but I think they're going to rely heavily on guys like Horvat and Barzal to win you those 2-1 games, those 3-2 games, when the games are a little bit tighter. Because, when you look up and down this forward group, past them, maybe Anders Lee and Brock Nelson, who was a little bit of a surprise to me last year, are going to chip in a few goals here and there. But, man, really outside of that, I do have my concerns for sure. So the depth at this forward group.
Yeah, are they going to be able to score goals, which is so important in today's NHL? It just, if there's one team in the Metro that made the playoffs that I'm most concerned about, it's the Islanders.
Well, to me, if there's one team that made the playoffs in the entire NHL that I'm most concerned about, it's the Islanders.
Okay, all right.
For me, yeah.
I feel you on that. Yeah,
I just worry about their forward group. I mean, they've got the goaltending, they've got the defense, but they just don't have enough up front for me to feel confident about them trying to outscore their opponents. I mean, hell, they had a 21 goal scorer in Zach Parise, and they're not even trying to get him back on a PTO to say, hey, you know what, just come back. Hell, if you had your choice between Cal Clutterbuck or Matt Martin or Zach Parise, I'd take Parise all day.
Yeah, I wonder if it's more Parise. Did I see something about Zach Parise? He was going to wait a minute before he came back?
That could be. Yeah, I heard he wasn't going to attend Islanders camp, but then again, I never heard he got a PTO.
Just doesn't want to come to camp.
Yeah, so who knows?
He's not retiring. He said, we'll see how the rest of the season goes, but right now it's important for him to be at home. He spent a couple years with the Islanders, and so that is his decision at this point. So, I mean, that's... it doesn't seem like he's retiring, but he just doesn't want to go to camp. Maybe he's doing the Patrick Kane, I'll just sign somewhere in December and come in wherever he wants to go. I mean, It's not a bad move. If you think about it, for a veteran, I mean, he's not fantastic by any means, but he can come in and be on your third line. He could slot up a little bit, play on their second power play or something. But for a veteran to be able to go, yeah, I don't want to play all 82 games. I want to play 45 games and go to the playoffs and see if I can win a cup. Man, why wouldn't you sit back and see where you can sign?
The smarter move for him is the fact that he can sit around and wait and see how the standings play out instead of trying to be okay, who's going to be on top? No, he'll actually see who's on top and then go sign there.
Yep, exactly. Which, is a team on the very top going to want him? Probably not. But probably if the Islanders are in a good position, maybe he comes back. But he might just be well, the Islanders are kind of bad, so I don't really want to go play. I don't really want to go back. But I think the Islanders are. They might be the most boring team to me in the Metro, other than Philadelphia. Philadelphia is just bad, but the Islanders are just have a bore about them that I just can't get into. I don't know. Sorry, Islanders fans. Something about that forward group that just is you guys aren't scoring goals. It's not as fun to watch.
Yeah, they might not make the playoffs, but they could potentially have a Vezina winner this year. True.
And he would be the reason they make the playoffs.
Exactly.
If he wins the Vezina, it's because they definitely made the playoffs. So there's also that. All right. So let's move to the other side of the city in New York, over to the Rangers, where lots of mostly standing pat, other than bringing in Blake Wheeler. That was an interesting signing, but he comes in at $800,000. You can bury him away if it doesn't work out. But for the most part, we're running it back with the team that was here last season. And I'm totally okay with that. I think that series against New Jersey could have gone either way. And if the Rangers had beat them, I think it could have been a completely different playoff picture. And the Rangers are going to do what they do best. They're going to be incredible on the power play, and they're going to rely on Shesterkin.
Yeah, I mean, their biggest offseason acquisition in my mind, while I do think Blake Wheeler could be a sneaky value add in fantasy leagues, to me, the best offseason acquisition was Peter Laviolette. This is a head coach that has made the Stanley Cup Finals.
In fantasy.
Yeah, yeah. Peter Laviolette has made the Stanley Cup Finals 3 times in his career, and he does it quick. He's done it in years 1, 2, and 3 with 3 different teams, and so this is a guy who, in my opinion, is going to come in here really fast, and I think take this team, to a whole nother level very, very quickly. So,
and you just need either Kakko or Lafreniere to find it.
Well, so here's my opinion on those 2 guys. I think they had good growth last year, and I don't.
They did.
They both put up about 40 points each. But here's the thing: most guys in their position, when you're getting drafted number 1 or number 2, you're usually going into places that have opportunity for you to play in top 6 roles. You don't have a lot of talent around you, but these guys get drafted in a spot where they've got proven elite guys.
They're fourth liners.
Yeah, and so it's hard for them to get that growth and that ice time that they need, because look, these guys on any other team at the time that was struggling and drafting at the top like New York did, they would be playing on the first power play unit, but these guys will be lucky to see PP2 time. Okay.
Yeah. That's very true. They don't get the power play time that another first overall, second overall pick would probably get.
Yeah, now Blake Wheeler comes in here, and he's probably going to take some power play time from these guys too.
I am very curious as to what Blake Wheeler's role on this team is going to be. I mean, he's coming out off of a 55-point season. He's never been a big goal scorer. He's a guy who's going to dish the puck. He had a really nice playoff, albeit in 5 games, but he played well. And I'm just curious. I'm curious. Is he sort of their replacement for Patrick Kane? He does play the right side. Patrick Kane isn't signed there yet. I wonder if Patrick Kane does come back again, but it seems like Blake Wheeler may be their option of, well, we lost we're not going to have Patrick Kane. We've got Blake Wheeler, and I think Blake Wheeler maybe does a little bit more for you because Patrick Kane was hurt. I think he can be more effective than Kane was in those tight roles where you need him to be tight defensively. So, not that Blake Wheeler's known for his defense, but...
No, I love this signing, though, because he's going to come in with a chip on his shoulder, right? He was basically cast out of Winnipeg, stripped off his jersey. So he's coming into a team where he takes a 1-year prove-it deal kind of thing, and he's going to go out there and say, you know what, I can still skate, I can still play. The one knock I do have on him is he doesn't score a lot of goals. So if you're Laviolette, you got to pair him with somebody who's going to score some goals. And obviously Panarin is similar. He doesn't score goals, so please don't put those 2 guys together. But, maybe he puts them on the third line or second line with Lafreniere and finds a little winning combination there.
All right. Yeah. Does everything for the Rangers comes down to Shesterkin. If he's a Vezina candidate once again, Adam Fox is a Norris Trophy candidate once again. We're looking at a team that is, like you said, a lock for the playoffs. Last time I said that, the Flyers missed the playoffs, and but do the Rangers have a ceiling higher than where they went last year? Like, are they better than 3rd in this division? Are they a team that can win multiple rounds and get back to conference finals, maybe the finals like they did the year before?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, to me, they're still a top 3 team in this division, and the question is, are you going to try to take that first overall spot, which I think many writers and pundits will have, penciled in Carolina already. But if you can somehow slip in there and get that number 1 spot, you don't have to play Jersey in the first round. And I think it makes things a little bit easier. But I think with this team, what they have up front on the back end, adding Eric Gustafsson, a 40-point guy to play on your third pair. I mean,
yeah, also though, when Eric Gustafsson went to a good Leafs team, he barely saw time, right? Like, he played 2 games in the playoffs. he played 9 games in the regular season, and he did not put up the kind of numbers that he was putting up in Washington. So,
and who knows, with Ryan Lindgren, Keandre Miller, who knows? One of those guys get hurt, or maybe they want to mix lines up a little bit, right? Maybe move Jacob Trouba down, third pairing.
Yeah, from a defensive standpoint, they have a little more depth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we know the Rangers will add at the deadline. It's possible that Patrick Kane re-signs with them midway through the year, sometime in December or something like that. And then that adds a whole nother dynamic as well. So I think this isn't going to be the Rangers team that walks into the playoffs. But this is a great start. And the Rangers are in they have tons of depth. Maybe, dare I say, the most forward depth out of any team in the Metro. It's possible, especially if they go out and grab Patrick Kane.
Maybe outside of New Jersey, but
I don't know. I'm taking. I mean, it's not as far as depth. I mean, New Jersey's top 6 is fantastic, and I think as good as New York's. I think they lost a little bit of their depth in the offseason, to be honest. New Jersey.
Okay.
Okay. Well, let's move on to New Jersey then. Let's. I guess the biggest question for New Jersey, before we jump into their forwards, is their goaltending. It's Vitek Vanacek, Akira Schmid. I know it worked out last year. Schmid ended up kind of being a fantastic number 2 for this team, and he played 18 games, .922 save percentage. He played 9 playoff games and was great. Can he run that back? Like, we've seen plenty of goalies have one good year, and by one good year I mean like 30 good games. And Vitek Vanacek was really the guy all year long, and he just really mightily struggled in the playoffs too. But are you concerned about this goaltending pair?
No, I think it's a good enough pair to go out there and win you games and still get you in a top 3 spot in this division. But, the question is, if one of these guys get hurt, am I comfortable just relying on one of those guys and then having to, again, you have to go back to the well a little bit with Keith Kincaid maybe or Nico Dawes. Am I comfortable with bringing one of those guys up to help out? Because, we know Vitek Vanacek has an injury history, and Schmid, again, he had a great year last year. He looked very, very good in the playoffs, but again, he didn't play a whole year or even half of one. No, exactly. He's only got 24 games of NHL experience under his belt, and in 23 games with the Utah Comets, he wasn't phenomenal. So again, what guy are you going to get this season? So if he proves that he's not living up to the hype, or maybe he's struggling a little bit, right? Do I feel comfortable then? Well, maybe not. But the one thing I will say, New Jersey does have plenty of deadline cap space, and again, accounting for additional long-term, LTIR guys and things like that during the course of the season, they could make a play for a goaltender. And one that I look at, we talked about Carter Hart, but I look, at a different division, and maybe at some point you can. If Boston's struggling, maybe you go and look at Allmark, who's going to need a new contract after this year, and probably a very pricey one. That Boston can't afford. Maybe you're willing to make a big move like that.
There you go. I like that. That's a good idea. Boston will be an interesting team to see.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Swayman. I meant Swayman, not Allmark needs a new contract. Yeah. But
either one of them, I guess, could potentially be dealt if you wanted to keep Swayman as your guy, although Allmark did just win you the Vezina. So.
Right. And then let's not forget, too, on this back end, we didn't even mention Luke Hughes, who already, I think, is written in. He's got the second best odds for the Calder this season.
All right. Yeah, I mean, he's going to be a very good defenseman at least as far as offensive defenseman goes. I like that he's going to really get an opportunity, and that happens. But they dealt Damon Severson, and allows for some new blood to come in here. And I mean, top to bottom. Hamilton, Marino, Siegenthaler, Colin Miller, Brendan Smith, Kevin Ball, Luke Hughes. I mean, that's 7 defensemen that could all be in most NHL teams' top 5 defensemen. So I think they're in a good position from a defensive standpoint. Maybe they don't have the super, super high end. Like, do we drop Dougie Hamilton in that? I know he puts up a lot of points. But I don't know. You look at his production in the playoffs. Look at how much it dropped off. I mean, he went from 22 goals in the regular season to 1 in the playoffs in 12 games, and 4 points, a -11. I don't know that I'm willing to lump Dougie Hamilton in the same kind of breath as a Victor Hedman or an Erik Karlsson, like guys who are just that top elite. But he's the next one down, right? Like he maybe isn't. He's a little above Matthias Ekholm, not quite Roman Josi though.
No, I'd put him in that second tier with guys like Josh Morrissey.
Yeah, yes, that's a good.
Other players like
that.
that.
Yeah. So that to me, New Jersey. I mean, hey, like Siegenthaler, he had a fantastic year, 21 points, but like kind of really cemented himself as a really important part of that defense. Can he do it again? That's really his first year doing that. Can he do it again? What does Brendan Smith have left in the tank? Kevin Ball, young defenseman, 23 years old. He had low points in the regular season last year. Played well enough to find his way onto the roster though, but this is what I'm getting at is like this is the one area for New Jersey where you're like, all right, you have a lot of good defensemen. You have a lot of guys who are second pairing defensemen. Dougie Hamilton, obviously first pairing defenseman. Luke Hughes, I know we're all talking about him like he's going to be this fantastic defenseman. I'm sure he will be, but this year will he be a top pairing defenseman? I don't know. He's 20 years old. There's a lot of growth that needs to happen, especially, he came in late last year to play for the Devils. What did he play? 2 games in the regular season, 3 in the playoffs. He got scratched in the playoffs. Like, I don't know that he's going to be all that people think he's going to be right away. Doesn't mean he's not going to be a great defenseman, but right away. So it is my biggest question mark is the Devils' defense. If there's a world where the Devils miss the playoffs, it's probably because Dougie Hamilton, John Marino, maybe one of those 2 guys goes down with an injury and New Jersey finds themselves in a position to where they just can't get the puck up to their fantastic forward group. Maybe the best top 6 in definitely the Metro, but maybe in the entire Eastern Conference. So that's where I hit with the Devils. Their defense kind of just worries me a little.
Okay. Yeah. No, I love it. I think I'm kind of with you on that one. Luke Hughes, you got to shelter him a little bit, give him some time to develop, be responsible defensively, right? That's the concern there. Because I have no doubt he's going to be able to put up the points, but that defensive, quality that maybe is lacking, pair him with somebody who's very responsible, i.e. maybe like a Colin Miller. Let him help him develop a little bit there. And then, of course, like we talked about earlier, the goaltending, right? So if that goes down, if that gets a little suspect, that could be...
Because 2 years ago, that was the case.
Right, exactly. So, I'm not worried about the Sport group and what they can do offensively because, again, when you've got guys like, Erik Haula and...
Meyer, Hughes, Bratt, Heischer, Palat, Toffoli, there's your top 6, and it's fantastic.
Yeah. Right. Tyler Toffoli, Mercer. I mean, you've got so many good names there. It's a bevy of riches for this forward group. So if they can keep the puck out of the net, I have no doubt that, again, they can get back in the playoffs.
Yep, absolutely. They should be a relative lock for the playoffs, but that the defense combined with the goaltending, there's a world in which that, I think Pittsburgh's going to be better. I think Washington's going to be better. I think Columbus is going to be better. I think maybe even the Rangers are better than they were last year. And, I mean, the Islanders get Bo Horvat for the entire year. That's going to mean something for them. And I think I could see a world, maybe the Devils don't make they don't miss the playoffs, but maybe the Devils are actually, they have the year we thought they would have last year this year. I think last year we were like, they're definitely going to be in the playoff hunt. They'll probably be a wild card team. That's where I'd slot them. Maybe the 3rd team in the division. So I don't know if they finish top 2 in the division, but I think they'll make the playoffs. But they might end up just being a wild card team this time around. So,
all right, we'll see.
But I guess they do have Timo Meier all year long, so that's another thing. And hopefully he kind of gels a little better, having the whole whole training camp and the whole year to play there as well. Okay, one last team here. It is the Carolina Hurricanes. They won the division last year, and they are a lot of people's favorites to win the division again this upcoming year, especially bringing back Anthony DeAngelo, Dmitry Orlov. They've got they're running back their whole goaltending trio. This team looks largely the same as they did last year, plus Orlov and Michael Bunting on the forward side. Did they do enough for you to fend off the teams below them?
Well, listen, I love the Dmitry Orlov signing, and I love the fact that he's almost essentially betting on himself, taking a 2-year deal where we know he probably could have got a 4 or 5 year deal somewhere else at like $6 million, $6.5 million.
Yeah, he basically was like, I don't want to. He told his agent said, this is dumb, and he said, I don't care. I don't want to sign a longer than a 2-year deal anyways.
Right.
Because I want to see where I could go after that.
You rarely see that, and I love that. Because I think he's a Swiss Army knife defenseman. He can do everything. So he's going to bring a lot of different options to that team. But, as far as, what I wish they would have added in this offseason, to me, I still wish they would have added, a top 6 goal scorer. I think, again, we saw with, Svechnikov getting injured and out during the playoffs, it very much hurt their ability to score goals. And it cost them a series, cost them the, potential shot at the cup, which I think if, they had gone up against Vegas in the finals, boy, I don't know. I would have probably picked Carolina over them.
Also, is there any team that could lose their top scorer and still win a round in the playoffs besides Carolina?
Right.
There's very few, right? Like, imagine the Leafs losing Matthews. Or imagine, if Vegas hadn't had Mark Stone. Or if Florida was without Tkachuk.
Yeah, we saw what happened to them.
Right. Yeah, they stunk.
Exactly.
Pittsburgh without Crosby. Like, there's all sorts of teams where if their best player wasn't there, they're not going to win that round. And I don't know that you can, you have to expect that your best players are going to be around come playoff time. I mean, and if they're not, you're probably not going to win the cup. Like, that's just kind of is the unlucky portion of what hockey brings. But I agree, and this has been an issue with Carolina for several years, is where's that one extra elite goal scorer that would certainly put you over the top and make you a definitive cup contender? They've got the defense all settled. I mean, they just keep on adding good defensemen all the time.
Well, the big question with defenses is what are we going to see next year, right? They've got a lot of UFAs.
Sure.
I mean,
you're looking at it and you go, all right, between Shea and Pesci, who's staying? That's the biggest question mark. And do they both last the season?
Right. And maybe they move one of those guys to bring in that goal scorer, right?
Sure. Yeah, you could see it. I mean, they would have the depth to absorb that. But yeah, it's going to be another year of dominance, I think, from the Carolina Hurricanes, because with Rod Brind'Amour at the helm, these guys aren't taking nights off, and I really like I like going out and getting Michael Bunting. I think he'll make a difference in their top 6. I think he adds something that they didn't have there before. I also really like the idea of Jordan Staal, Michael Bunting, being on the same team together, where I think that Jordan Staal was better in terms of talent wise, and Bunting is a little bit older than Staal was when he broke out in the league, but I think they're similar players in that, like, they both definitely tried to get under your skin a little bit. They're good two-way. They kind of like Swiss Army knife type of player. And I think that maybe having Jordan Staal there to show Michael Bunting how to be that type of player could be really big for his career.
Well, yeah, I don't hate the move for sure. But so with me, when I look at teams, there's always one team every year that kind of surprises, right? We had last year with New Jersey, but then there's always teams that, one team every year that just kind of falls off the rails a little bit, right? I think that was Columbus as well last year. Maybe we expected Columbus to push for a playoff spot, and they just sort of fell off and just had a disastrous season. But
not too often, though, that we go, hey, this team could win the President's Trophy, and then they don't make the playoffs.
Right. And while I don't think they're going to be that disastrous, if there's any team that I think could potentially slip a few spots and not live up to, again, those expectations where everybody's essentially written them in as the Metropolitan Division winner already, I think this is a team that could potentially fall down to the third place, because I like what New Jersey did, or what New Jersey did in the offseason. I like the Rangers where they're at, and I think those two teams are going to compete for that top spot in this division along with Carolina. But I think if anybody has more of a chance to falter, I would say Carolina, because they don't have proven goal scorers up front like these other two teams do.
Okay. Yeah, I just, it seems as though a bulk of the league is moving to doing goal scoring by committee. And it's like Carolina's been doing it long before it became cool. And then last year, like the Kraken made it extra cool. And then the Vegas Golden Knights won the cup. And that sort of, I know they have superstars as well, but Vegas kind of, they score with a ton of depth, right? Like that was their big MO, was they just had a tremendous amount of depth. Florida could not compete with the amount of depth. Even with Matthew Tkachuk in the lineup, I don't think Florida was going to stand a chance with Vegas's depth. And Carolina is just, they have a filthy amount of depth, especially at the defensive side. I mean, shoot, their bottom six could be Brett Pesce and Anthony DeAngelo. I mean, or Brady Shea. Like they're ridiculous. They have players who are on their bottom pairing defensemen who could be some team's top defenseman.
I agree with you.
That's unlike anything we've really seen in a long time.
This defense is disgusting. I mean, that's essentially why Vegas was also so good last year, because they had a disgusting third pair. It was just so good with Whitecloud, and
wasn't Chris Chelios on the Red Wings third pairing when they won the cup in like 98 or 2002? Maybe one of those 2 years. I don't remember which one. Something like that. I mean, I'm not that I'm comparing Brett Pesce to Chris Chelios, but a fantastic defenseman playing way down the lineup.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a reason why I don't think he wants to sign an extension here. I think he wants to play somewhere where he can actually play. He's probably looking up the lineup like, what the frick, guys? Was that not good enough for you? You got to bring in Orlov?
Yeah, so that right side, right? We know Brett Burns is going to get top power play minutes, but then you've got DeAngelo, who's going to come in on that second pairing and, be that right side guy. So that eventually, or just eliminates Pesce from getting any chance on a power play.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if he gets dealt before the deadline. That'll be the. Do they keep him and say we're running it with these guys and we'll go? Let's go win a cup, or do they try to acquire something for him? Maybe balance out their forward group, like you said, bring in a goal scorer. But those are just so tough to go out and grab. Like how many teams go? Boy, I know we have a lot of guys that can score goals, so let's go out and get a stay-at-home defenseman for him. I don't think so. I don't know a team that has too many goal scorers that they're like, hey, let's give a goal scorer to one of the better teams in the league for this.
So. I'll tell you what, though, depending on one team I will look at that I am concerned with their defense is the Florida Panthers, right? And so you look at, you've got Ekblad and Weegar. They're basically going to miss, first couple months of the season. They've got guys that are UFAs coming up and need new contracts. So, perhaps maybe a guy like Sam Bennett or Carter Verhaeghe are just poking their heads out and saying, we'll make a 1-for-1 swap here.
Yeah, but Sam Bennett, I mean, he had 16 goals last year. I don't know that he's the answer to your goal scoring.
Carter Verhaeghe scored 42 last year.
But Verhaeghe's so important to your offense. That's
they're
what
not
I'm getting.
dealing him, but yeah.
It's just so hard to find a team that's willing to give that player up. I mean, outside of, sure, a team that's deep out of the playoffs and it's obvious something's not going to work. Those guys could be shipped off. But I think that Chicago and maybe like Chicago's going to deal players at the deadline. We know that. But Taylor Hall's got 2 years left on his deal. I don't know that that'll be easily dealt.
Well, maybe would you be willing to take a guy like, say, Tomas Hertl or Logan Couture at a discounted rate of $4 million?
Sure, absolutely, yeah. Or Tanner Pearson in Montreal. That's not a bad thought there, but
yeah. But the other problem is though a lot of these teams that are at the bottom of the league, they're rebuilding and they're not taking a 29-year-old Brett Pesce either. So
Right, exactly. One team that could be interesting if they were willing to, if an extension was in place for Pesce because of the other defensemen that they're going to lose. What about now? Carolina would probably have to give up something in addition to, but a Brett Pesce for Elias Lindholm if he wasn't willing to sign.
Ooh,
send him back. Wasn't he from Carolina?
I don't remember.
Wasn't he in that deal?
Oh no! I don't.
Who am I
think
thinking
so.
of?
I think Noah Hannafin is who you're thinking of.
No. Yeah, he was. No. Yeah, Carolina.
No, Brett Pesce never went to.
No, not Brett Pesce. I'm talking about Elias Lindholm.
Oh yeah. He was. Yeah, he was part of that Noah Hannafin deal. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, because he had 44 points and then he went to Calgary and had 78 the next year. So send Lindholm back to Carolina for Pesce.
Oh boy, that would be.
You'd have to include a little more because the centerman's more valuable than he is, but because of the defenseman that Calgary is likely to lose here, if they were going to lose out on Lindholm, it would open that up. My goodness, Lindholm, $4.8 million on the cap hit. That's highway robbery. That guy's going to get closer.
Well, he's going to get Dylan Larkin, Horvat money.
Yeah, Horvat. Yep, exactly. Okay, well, that is the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, do we want to just reiterate, go back through our playoff picks before we get out of here?
I absolutely will.
You thought 3 teams would make the playoffs in this division.
Yeah, I said it's possible, right? We could only see 3 playoff teams come from this division, with Buffalo, Ottawa, Detroit, all in my mind getting better. But I suppose I'll go first and shoot it off here. I think ultimately at the top, I do have the New York Rangers penciled in as my number 1 team from this division. I think Carolina and Jersey are pretty much going to fight it out for that 2-3 spot there. And then, in my opinion, I don't think anybody. I think Pittsburgh gets pretty damn close, but I think they miss out again by like a point this season. They'll finish in that 4th spot, and then you're going to see, I think, Columbus right below them, and then the Islanders, Washington, Philly.
So the Islanders are falling hard.
I think so.
Okay. Yeah, I have the top team in this division still is the Carolina Hurricanes. Number 2, I'm going Pittsburgh Penguins in at the number 2.
Ooh,
I think they're having a big bounce back year.
I love it,
and,
though.
And I think this will be a year they make a lot of noise. Maybe really their one last legitimate shot at a cup could be this year. I think they'll do everything they can to make that happen. And then coming in at number 3, I'm going the New York Rangers, and then wild card New Jersey Devils. So I do think that there will be 4-4. I don't think that Detroit, Ottawa, Buffalo are all going to be standings wise so much better that one of those teams makes the playoffs, and so does every other team that made the playoffs in the Atlantic last season, also making it in. So I mean that it was pretty close last year to that happening. I mean there were almost 5 teams, but I think it's less likely. It's likely that there's 4 teams, and I think that'll be the way it all plays out.
I think you convinced me. I had Pittsburgh in at 4. I'm going to keep them at 4, but I do think they make the playoffs.
Okay, I just don't see that many teams in the Atlantic doing that well. But we'll get to the Atlantic. I'm concerned about the Boston Bruins. So, we'll get there. We'll get there. Montreal is going to be real bad again. They're going to be really bad. They might be worse than Philadelphia next year.
Oh boy. Okay. Wow. Wow.
Oh, they don't have a goalie. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that. So our next show will be the Pacific Division, though. We'll break down the Ducks, Sharks, Canucks, Flames, Kraken, Kings, Oilers, and Golden Knights. And of course, we'll give our playoff picks for that division as well. And then we'll be closing it out with the 6 teams in the Atlantic that we don't like as much as we like the Red Wings and the Leafs. So that'll be our final preview show before the start of the regular season. And then we'll actually be watching real life hockey. Although we will be watching real life hockey in 4 days on the 23rd, which is exciting. Justin, any last thoughts on the Metro?
Oh boy, good luck to Mr. Vincent over there. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
In Columbus.
Yeah. If I have anything to any advice that I could pass on to him, it would be don't ask anyone for their phones. Just leave that out of it. Or, maybe just like walk around with an HR guy. Hey, am I allowed to do this?
There you go.
No? Okay. You should apply for that job.
Just get somebody from the NHLPA to follow you around.
Right. Yeah, we're not comfortable with you doing that. You can't have that guy on power play too. We don't like him that much. All right. I'll take him off. All right. Well, that's our show. You can find us on Twitter at OT Hockey Talk. And until next time, when we preview the Pacific Division, we hope you enjoy the last shreds of summer, and we will talk to you guys soon.